Hey everyone, so we have a AP macro FRQ. This one's actually from 2012, so it's quite old, but it's still great to review the concepts in Unit 3 of AP macro, okay? So it says, assume the economy of Anderson land is in long-run equilibrium with full employment. In the short run, nominal wages are fixed, okay? The first part wants us to draw a correctly labeled graph of the short-run aggregate supply, long-run aggregate supply, and aggregate demand. Show the equilibrium output and price level. So this is a pretty normal graph. We have price level on the y-axis, and then down here we're going to have the real GDP. Okay, boom. So now the first thing let's label is our aggregate demand, which is downward sloping. So we're going to call that aggregate demand 1. And then we're going to have our upward sloping short run aggregate supply. So short run aggregate supply 1. And since it says we're at full employment, that means our long run aggregate supply curve is going to run straight through the middle there. And is also vertical. So long run aggregate supply. And the reason it's vertical is because it is independent of the price level. Okay. So long run aggregate supply, cool. So now we need to show each of the following: the equilibrium output and the equilibrium price level. Okay, so we just have to find the intersection between our short run aggregate supply and aggregate demand, and then go down. So you see our price level is, actually it's over here, is our price level. We'll label PL1, and then our output is Y1. All right, it says assume there is a increase in exports from Anderson land. On your graph in part A, show the effect of higher exports on the equilibrium in the short run, labeling the new equilibrium output and price level Y2 and PL2 respectively. Okay, so we get an increase in exports. Now, an increase in exports, net exports is one of the things that can shift aggregate demand, right? Aggregate demand is made up of a bunch of things: consumer spending, you have investments, government spending, all of that. So if there's anything that can change those factors, right, anything that changes those factors, then you get a shift in your aggregate demand. So if there's an increase in exports, well, yeah, that definitely increases your net exports, and therefore the exports are good, right, where Anderson land is pumping out products and giving it to other countries, and so that is going to increase our aggregate demand. So it is going to shift to the right. Now let's call that aggregate demand 2. And now we just need to find our new price level and quantity, which is this new intersection right there. And so we can get boom. We'll label this Y2. And then underneath price level, bang, price PL2. All right, C says, based on your answer in part B, what is the impact of higher exports on real wages in the short run? Okay, so C. All right, so the first thing we want to, get out of the way is, what are real wages? Well, real wages are basically what people actually earn, right? It's like adjusted for inflation, right? Because inflation is a really real thing, and that's different from something like nominal wages. And it says nominal wages are fixed. Okay, so that's important. So what will happen to real wages in this case? Well, if we think about it, it will decrease. Okay, why does the real wages, so the actual wage that people take home with them after inflation, why does that decrease? Well, first off, we know from the beginning of this question, it says in the short run, nominal wages are fixed. So nominal wages are fixed, right? These are sticky wages, which in the short run do not change, okay? Even with the increase in aggregate demand, it's a sticky wage, it's a nominal wage, so it does not change, right? It takes some time for that to happen. And because of that, we know from this, we can see in our graph, even though real GDP and production's ramping up and that's increasing, our price level also increases on a bunch of goods. Okay, so what happens then? Well, we know that price level increases. And so if everything's getting more expensive, but your real wage is, it's stuck, right? that's actually going to make it go down. Okay, that solves part C. Let's go on to D1. It says, as a result of the increase in exports, export-oriented industries in Anderson Land increased expenditures on new container ships and equipment. Okay. The first part asks, what component of aggregate demand will this change? This is a freebie, right? If you think about aggregate demand, what are the things that make up? You have consumer spending, you have government spending, you have investment spending, you have net exports, right? So this one, if you're, spending more on container ships and equipment, that sounds like investment, right? You're investing in new equipment and new ships to maybe in the future increase your exports. So this one is just investment spending. Cool. Let's move on to the last part of this FRQ. It says, what is the impact on the long run aggregate supply? Okay, so this is interesting. Because we just had investment spending, right? We have new container ships and new equipment. That means we just invested in capital, okay? If you think about it, if we invest in capital, long run aggregate supply curve will shift to the right? Because if we have better capital, so we just invested in capital, what that means is our production capabilities / output will increase. And that theoretically should also lead to increased employment, okay? Because if you can produce more things, and you're making more money, then you can hire more people, right? All that is ultimately going to cause unemployment to go down and employment to increase. And we know our long run aggregate supply also represents the amount of employment we have. So we need to reach full employment again, and therefore our long run aggregate supply curve, long run aggregate supply will shift to the right. Okay, cool. So that is it for the entire FRQ. If you guys want more videos just like this,